everyone, it's Nicole here today for lawnfawn with a greeting that is incorporated within this underwater scene card. Sometimes when you're creating a scene card, there just isn't a natural place to put a sentiment. And in this case, I decided to incorporate it right into the scene. It kind of follows the line of that cute little shark and works really well, is part of the scene, doesn't take away from anything, but it's still there. I inked up my background, and I apologize, that part must have not got filmed on accident. The colors for my background are Blueprint Sketch and Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink. I spritzed it with water from a distress sprayer. The panel was die cut with a large stitched rectangle die, the largest A2 size die. Then I am pouncing some Lawn Fawn Yeti pigment white ink through a raised stencil and blending it out into the background to make it appear that light is filtering through the water. And I like to just kind of blend with one of the colors of ink I've already used. Now I am going to use the Bayou backdrop as seaweed rather than vines. If you flip it around and turn it upside down, you can make this be more of a seaweed type of look, and I thought it would be really cute to frame up my scene. That inside piece that I've popped out, I can also use, and I am going to die cut that using a simple stitched hillside border. This is going to be the sand along the bottom of my scene card back behind the seaweed, and then my frame is going to go over that inked background that I just showed you. To ink up the sand, I'm going to use some Antique Linen Distress Oxide ink, and we're just going to ink this all up. I also want to mention anything I'm inking for the background was die cut from Bristol Smooth cardstock. It's going to accept the ink really well. It's going to be really super smooth and have beautiful results. Now I'm going to take my Bayou backdrop, and I need to do a little masking. I want the seaweed, or these little, whatever I call them, seaweed, coming up from the bottom to be green, and I want the rest of it to be another color. Now originally I thought I wanted this to be sand along the bottom, and then I would ink up the edges with Blueprint Sketch and Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink to mimic the look of the ocean. As I did this, and you're going to see, I left it in on purpose. I wanted to show you how you can fix something like this. Distress Oxide inks are super forgiving. When used with Bristol Smooth cardstock, a watercolor cardstock would also work. So what I'm going to do is I ink this all up. I'm going to remove my masks and take a good look at it, and I really, really do not like the harsh line at the bottom. You're going to see that here in a minute. So let's lift off this Post-it tape that I used to mask, and I don't like this at all. I'm going to grab my background, and I looked at it kind of out of range of camera, and I was like, nope, that's not going to work. We're going to take our Blueprint Sketch ink, and we're going to go right over that antique linen, and you can see it blends out beautifully. Is it maybe as blue as it would be if I had used it right on white paper? Maybe not, but I think it's pretty forgiving, and I think that if I didn't tell you, you would never know that this had a little bit of that antique linen underneath. So I like that so much better. I did spritz it with water from a distress sprayer to mimic the look of the background. I'm going to mask off the sides and the bottom now. And I'm going to take the brand new Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink, which I'm so super excited about. This is my favorite green ink, so I'm delighted to be able to use this to create my green seaweed. And I'm just going to ink it up, concentrating the ink at the bottom and lightening at the top. Spritz this with water from a distress sprayer, blot it dry, all that good stuff. Remove our Post-it tape masks and look at this awesome inked seaweed border, so it looks like an underwater scene. So there's all of our elements. I did die cut the Bayou backdrop 2 more times from smooth white cardstock, and we are going to stack this so it's 3 high. Little tricky with all of these little vines or seaweed because they're so simple, or delicate, I guess I want to say, not simple, delicate. And so I'm going to take some Ranger Multi-Matte Medium, draw little lines of glue all over this, stack them one on top of another, making sure to take a little bit of extra time to line these up, make sure that they're one on top of another, put something heavy on top to hold it nice and flat. This is definitely an example of kind of building a scene from the background up. I often create my scenes this way. When I'm imagining them, I lay out my stamps and elements that I think I'm going to use. I lay out my greeting I'm going to use. I lay out my dies that I'm going to use. And I often see the scene as the background up. I know what elements I want to put into this scene, but the background is what makes those elements really pop. And in this case, it's this amazing underwater ocean scene. Now off camera, I did stamp a whole bunch of images so that I could save a little time because I am leaving the coloring in for almost everything here. The shark is C2, 5, 7, and 20. The colors I'm using for anything are shown across the top of the screen. I know the next couple of fish I colored, I did not get filmed. I guess I thought my camera was on and it wasn't. I had a lot of that today. I don't know what was going on with me. And so I did color these little fish and I just added my colors at the top of the screen. Y11 and 8, B24 and 28 for the blue and yellow fish, R27, 46, and 39 for the crab with a little colorless blender to lighten up some areas on his tummy. The rocks are E40, 43, and 44. And I want to mention, this is my initial images I colored. I was pretty sure before I ever got started that I would need more images than this. And I really wanted to use multiples, which you will see in the finished card. There are multiples of the jellyfish and my small yellow fish, and that is very much on purpose. I think repetition in a scene like this is a very useful tool that gives you this amazing full scene. Plus there's tons of other fish and other elements going on, but when I first start, I generally start with what I think I'll need, and then I knew I would have some duplicates, but at that point when I stamped the duplicates, I also realized I wanted a few extra things, some coral and things to put along the bottom of the scene, a couple of extra fish, the little hearts coming up from the shark, things like that. At that point, it's a great time to reevaluate and go ahead and stamp some additional things and color them if you need to. I'm going to finish coloring everything you see in here. The shark is from the Duh-Nuh stamp set. The rocks are from the Mermaid for You stamp set. Actually, the shark and one of the fish, one of the small yellow fish, is from the Duh-Nuh stamp set. From You Are Sublime, we've got several fish, the crab, coral, seaweed, the little hearts coming up from the shark. All of that is from You Are Sublime. Additional fish and coral are from Fintastic Friends. And then the jellyfish is from So Jelly. So not only are we incorporating our greeting into the background scene, but this is another example of mixing and matching your stamp sets to get the most out of them. This is a lot of stamp sets that I'm using here. So shop your lawnfawn stamp sets, see what all you have, what goes together. This works for lots of different scene cards, not just your ocean scene cards. It's one of my very favorite techniques because they tend to work with one another across the board. So you can create all kinds of amazing cards with these stamps and dies. I'm going to kind of lay everything out once I have die cut all of my images and get an idea for where I want things to go. Because at this point, I really do need to stamp my sentiment before I attach a single thing to my card other than we've got the background. I always generally try to stamp and emboss if I'm stamping and embossing first, but I've already built my background, so I need to go ahead and get that built. And I want it to slightly curve to follow the shape of my shark. I'm using a little post-it tape to hold some of that seaweed out of the way. And then I am going to use a powder tool. I'm going to stamp this with Versamark ink, sprinkle on some lawnfawn white embossing powder, and emboss the sentiment you are jawsome. This works really great. It's probably one of my favorite underwater ocean scene type of sentiments that Lawn Fawn has. I just think it's really, really cute and clever. Works so great with this adorable little shark. I'm making sure any little flecks of embossing powder are out of the way. And I'm also going to grab my heat tool, and I saw something, I didn't think it was covered all the way, so I went ahead and added a little more embossing powder. And then we are going to go ahead and heat set this so that it's nice and bright white against the background. So now that I have my sentiment stamped, I am ready to start putting it all together. And those rocks look really cute layered down there behind the seaweed. I want everything to be super layered, and I want this to be really, really full, almost kind of like an aquarium type of look. So we've got the things down here along the bottom, and I found it was easiest to add detail as I went. A lot of times I save this to the very end, and I thought I'd try something new today. So I added black glaze pen to the eyes and some white pen detail as well. And I'm going to be mixing and matching, adding and adhering things directly to my background, and then popping some up with foam adhesive for that little bit of dimension. This will also help with that illusion of lots of dimension in an underwater scene. So the shark is definitely a central focal point of this design. He's going to be popped up right there above the sentiment. We will take a black glaze pen and add detail to the eye here, a white pen, and add some detail pretty sparingly. I'm not going to go too over the top, but every single image is going to have a little bit of white pen detail to really help make it pop and add that fun, great little highlight. My jellyfish, I kind of like to know where my big guys are going first. So this big fish and my jellyfish are my two next biggest. And part of these images are, if anything is going to be kind of out of scene, if you will, I'm going to just trim that down instead of tucking it under the edge. I find when you tuck that underneath the edge, it makes the frame kind of wonky and doesn't look as good. So I like to just trim it off, and I don't even measure or draw a line. I just take my scissors and trim it. It usually works out fine. Let's add a foam adhesive dot behind a couple of the fish, but most everything else, with the exception of one of the jellyfish, are going to be flat to the background. And that's for a couple reasons. One, the dimension that I was talking about a minute ago. And number two, the smaller images are a little bit trickier to add foam adhesive behind. I have to trim it down, and I was feeling kind of lazy, and so I just use glue dots for most everything else. So there are my cute little, I call these the Dory fish from Finding Nemo. But I don't know why, but I love these fish, and I always color them this way. This set is from Fintastic Friends. It's been out for a couple years, and this is my favorite way to color those guys. So these are my two fish up at the top who are trimmed down. So the fish over, I guess, on the side, and then this fish I just added at the top. I've got my other little shark here that we're going to tuck underneath, kind of almost hiding behind the seaweed, which is okay. It really helps make this a really full scene. And then we've got all of our little guys over here on the edge. And again, we want to make sure that some are coming in off the edge, so we'll trim them down. Even when we get to the final jellyfish, I'm going to be trimming one of those down as well. And that'll be the second one that I do. This one's the initial one I popped up with a little foam adhesive. And I'm even slightly overlapping one of the fish because, again, this just lends itself to that really full aquarium underwater type scene. Pin detail with my white and black pins, of course, for everything. These are two of my most often used tools for all of these cute little critters for decorating them and finishing them off. So here is a look at what I decided I needed to finish off my scene. Another jellyfish, two more of the little yellow fish, another fish option because I thought went ahead and needed something else, a couple of coral, some more little seaweed. This one's going to be stamped and colored, and of course that little trio of hearts from the You Are Sublime stamp set, because I thought that would be cute coming up from the shark in lieu of using bubbles. I wanted to mention that too. All of these stamp sets pretty much have bubbles in them, which I think are adorable and I have used so many times. I did not use them today for a couple reasons. There is so much going on in the card. I thought it would be kind of hard to figure out where I wanted bubbles to go. So I spritzed my background, which was inked, with water from a distress sprayer, and that automatically gave me some lighter areas that I think almost look like bubbles. And then I'm also going to go ahead and take Nuvo Crystal Drops in Gloss White, and I will add some of my own bubbles with an embellishment type of product when I'm all done. I love the bubbles, and most of the time I do use the bubbles, but I was really afraid of trying to stamp them after I had adhered everything in case I got ink on one of these images that I've spent all of this time coloring. So just a couple of ideas. If you like to add bubbles to your underwater type of scenes, those are a couple things you can do. You can add it with glossy accents, crystal glaze. You can add it with Nuvo Crystal Drops like I'm doing here today, or you can spritz it with a mini mister or distress sprayer like I did today. There's just lots and lots of different ways to get that bubble look. So I'm adding in all of my final little pieces, trying to figure out where everything goes. I do want to mention I purposely did not attach any of the seaweed when I put together my background because I knew I was going to have quite a few additional things that needed to be tucked underneath, and I didn't want to kind of mess with that too much. When I'm all finished, I can take some liquid glue, add little drops of it behind my seaweed, and then put something heavy on top to hold it down until it dries, and that should help keep it nice and flat. Now I'm going back in and adding additional detail with my white pen. I noticed I forgot this fish up at the top of my card, so this is a great time to go ahead and fill that in. Make sure you've got all of your images embellished the way you want them to look. Have the eyes all embellished. I see that I forgot a fish. We want to add that little guy. For whatever reason, I love these little goldfish cracker looking fish. That's what I always call them. And they're in several of the lawnfawn stamp sets, and I think they are so much fun. I love them. I think they're an incredible addition to any underwater scene. Now, I thought it would be fun to draw in some little eyelashes for some of my underwater critters. So the jellyfish and one of the larger fish have some eyelashes. I really thought that was probably enough. I didn't want to do overkill, but I think eyelashes are kind of fun. We'll draw those in with a fine detail pen. We're going to grab some Nuvo Crystal Drops in Gloss White like I was mentioning. Also, here is where I went ahead and took some Ranger Multi-Matte medium, and I'm drawing some little lines of glue back behind these, and then I'm just going to pop them down in place. Some Nuvo Crystal Drops in White Blizzard, which is an awesome iridescent sparkle over the hearts, so they're nice and sparkly when dry, but still have that awesome peachy pink look to them. And then I'm not going to go too over the top, but I do want to fill in my background with my Nuvo Crystal Drops in Simply White. This is going to give some awesome little bubbles all over the design. Once these have sat and dried for a good 24 hours, your card will be ready to be put in the mail. And your underwater ocean scene card featuring a greeting that is incorporated into the overall background scene of the design is all finished. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this underwater ocean scene card. Please be sure to visit the Lawn Fawn blog for more information. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.